Hello. Oh, you know what? I forgot to turn on the captioner. I'll do that real quick. Hello everyone. Welcome to another Mental Health Monday here on Even Tacos Fall Apart. There are the captions. We've got them turned on now. I am so glad that you are here. So glad that you are present. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat. We do have a question queue open. Our topic tonight is going to be about PTSD, trauma, and families. So if you have any questions related to that or any questions in general, feel free to pop those into the chat wherever you are watching tonight, and we'll make sure to get them addressed while we are here live. And I am here live today talking with Dr. Michelle Sherman. She is a licensed clinical psychologist, researcher, author, and all-around champion for families navigating mental illness and trauma. She has spent her career supporting families of adults living with mental illness or PTSD, including nearly 2 decades in the VA system. She has also been a professor at the University of Oklahoma and the University of Minnesota medical schools. She is board certified in couple and family psychology, a fellow of the American Psychological Association, and currently serves as editor-in-chief of Couple and Family Psychology. And in 2022, she was named Family Psychologist of the Year. On top of all of that, as if it was not already enough, she has co-authored several books with her mom for families who love someone living with PTSD or mental illness. We are talking about, as I mentioned, trauma, PTSD, and how these things can impact not just individuals, but entire families and how healing can happen together. So, Dr. Sherman, thank you so much for joining today. I am excited for this conversation. I think it's going to be fantastic, but mostly just thank you for taking the time out.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here and looking forward to a meaningful conversation. So thank you for the invitation and opportunity.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and share your socials for folks. If y'all want to go through and connect with Dr. Sherman, feel free to pop over here. I've got website, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, any of those. Go ahead and pop over and say hi on any of those platforms. We already have a couple of questions in the question queue, so I'm going to go ahead and go through those really quickly. The first one is, do you have any crafts that you do? And that is by Crochet by Rose.
Oh, I definitely do. I enjoy a number of hobbies. Um, I have actually really in the past enjoyed doing jigsaw puzzles. I've not done those in a while, but I really enjoy doing that. And then the other kind of very different sort of hobby that I like is doing choreography. So we had a dancing studio in our house for about 10 years when I was growing up. And so I've been a lover of theater my whole life. And so I've been yeah, continuing to do that with different theaters, professional and community theaters, to create movement for different musicals. So that's another big hobby is choreography.
I
I
love
also enjoy
that.
playing with Toby. Those that you can see, this is Toby Zachary. We're in the middle of a thunderstorm here. So he normally is not sitting with me, but because we have a thunderstorm going on, he is on my lap because he's a little bit scared. So playing with my
Yes.
puppy is also a hobby.
Yeah. So you had a dance studio in your home growing up.
Yes,
Or was one of your
exactly. Yeah, we
parents an instructor or?
she kind of ran it, and my sister and I were also teachers. I started teaching in junior high, so I was
Yeah.
young. But yeah, it was a really wonderful family business having us. We're the first studio in the city where I grew up, and it was a really wonderful opportunity to connect with others through dance and movement.
Oh, that's really cool. And I'm glad you've taken it kind of into adulthood. Sometimes you get put into these things when you're a kid and you're like, no, now I hate it.
No, we for sure continue to, so it's lovely. A
That's
number of
awesome.
hobbies.
Yeah, that's great. And we always have a jigsaw puzzle, not during Mental Health Monday, but at the starting screen. And then anytime I'm playing a game, there's always a jigsaw puzzle on the screen for folks. So I love that you're a puzzle fan as well, because I love puzzles. When we go on family vacations, we'll put puzzles out on the table and we just all work on them, different times and everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Smart.
It's fun. I'll wake up in the morning and be like, oh, my sister did the whole edge. Wow.
The edge, the best place to start, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. Yeah. And then our next question is from Bite Mark. She would like to know, what is your favorite poem? And I know that ahead of time you kind of said, I don't know if I have a favorite poem, but a favorite song or anything like that is perfectly welcome as well.
Um, yes, I was thinking about this, and one of my favorite songs, and I think it's, just good for this time in our country as well, what's going on. But as I said, I'm a choreographer, and so I love musicals. One of my favorite songs is from the musical The Wiz, and it's a song "Brand New Day," and it's a spirit of hope and optimism, and each day the ability to start again and to enjoy the beauty and things that surround us. So that was my answer that I've prepared today, is thinking about a brand new day from the musical The Wiz.
I like that. I have not seen that musical, so I'll have to give that one. I'll have to put
Right.
that one on the list. Yeah.
But listen to the song, it's very invigorating and joyful, and lots of dancing, and yeah, it's a great song.
Oh, that's awesome. My 11-year-old has been watching The Sound of Music a lot lately, so I'll
Oh,
have to get him to watch The Wiz. So they go between like Hamilton, Sound of
yeah.
Music, and then all the Star Wars movies and like a whole bunch of different things. They watch Star Trek pretty much nonstop. The Good Place, like they have all these things on rotation. So I'll see if they can put that one in, and that way I can watch it too.
You know that on the Tony Awards on Sunday, the original cast of Hamilton is going to be performing at the
Oh,
Tonys.
oh, I did not know
I know
that.
Hamilton fans out there, tune into the Tonys on Sunday.
Okay, I wonder if my 18-year-old knows that. I'll have to tell him. I'll have to tell him after this. He would love to.
Should check into that. Yeah, I'm excited
He'll look into
myself
that
actually to see it.
for sure. Can you share a little bit about what led you to specializing in families affected by mental illness and trauma?
Yeah, you bet. So as you mentioned at the beginning, I worked for the VA system in actually Oklahoma City for about 17 years. And certainly, of course, in the VA, we work with veterans, many of whom have experienced a variety of different kinds of trauma, certainly combat trauma. I worked a lot with military sexual trauma,
Mm,
and a number of different kinds of traumatic events. And was just really struck when I would go out to the waiting room and pick up the veteran or veterans that we are going to be working with. And they go to their medication appointments and all these things. But all the families sitting in the waiting room, I'm like, gosh, so many of these are having commonality of needs, of sadness, of confusion, of stigma, of isolation. I'm like, we got to do something for these people. So this is in the mid 1990s, a long time ago. I wrote my very first little grant and was able to get a very small amount of money and started creating family education programs in the VA at that time to support families, not the veterans, but the families who lost a veteran, live with mental illness or PTSD. And that's kind of how it began. So in my professional career, just that awareness and that noticing that need. And then, frankly, in my own personal life as well, I have a lot of family history of mental illness, PTSD. And so, although I don't talk specifically about those individuals, that certainly is part of my motivation and my drive to continue this important work because of the people that I love in my own role as caregiver in different ways.
yeah, you saw the need and found a way to fill it, and then from your own personal experience, kind of let that
Exactly.
color your path as well. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, I was talking when I was doing your bio, even as I was saying it, I was like, that is a lot. So, how do you balance your work and your writing and your speaking and your volunteering and your hobbies and also taking care of your own well-being?
Yeah, something that's super important to me that we've not mentioned yet is physical activity, so exercise. That is a huge part of my physical and emotional well-being. So I keep that as a real priority. And then I'm a calendar gal. I put everything in my calendar and schedule and this and that. And so I intentionally schedule in fun, walks with friends or time with family or playing with my puppy or things like that. And so it is a juggling hat. But and I'll cite research occasionally because I'm kind of a research nerd.
Love it.
But research tells us that we do better when we have a variety of activities. It's a protective factor for our health. So if I just sat and did therapy all day long every day, which I couldn't, it's a greater risk for burnout.
Mm.
And so for me, actually, it's helpful to have a variety of different activities to keep me engaged and stimulated and not burned out. So, yeah, it's keeping my own self care as a priority. I stop working for sure every night by like 9 p.m. It's my wind down time. I take a bath, I read, I relax, go on walks. And so, really, that balance of time for self care and play and family and friends. Yeah, to balance some of the heavy stuff that my professional life involves.
Yeah. I always when I open my calendar, it gives me a lot of stress. So it's nice. if something pops up on my calendar, like yesterday, we went to the Oddities and Curiosities Expo in Dallas. And it's like that popped up on my calendar, and I was like, okay, great. This is something that I'm going to enjoy, something I want to do instead of, you know, jujitsu at 4:30 on Monday night. So and then I have to manage the 11-year-old to get him ready and get him off to it. And it's like, that's
Yeah,
fine. It's great. It's needed. It's on my calendar because it has to be there. But it's nice when it's something that you're looking forward to and something that
exactly.
you get some peace out of. That's great.
Exactly. Exactly.
You mentioned The Wiz already. Is there a movie you think more people should take the time to watch?
Oh, Hamilton is pretty darn good. The
True.
Hamilton movie. There's the Hamilton movie.
Mm-hmm.
I did just see in the theater, of course, Wicked. I really enjoyed the movie musical of Wicked, and can't wait to the second one that's coming out. I really like musicals, so I think that affects the movies that I like.
Yeah.
Um, those are a couple of recent ones that I especially liked.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure my kids have seen Wicked. I have not yet seen Wicked. So I
Oh,
gotta take the time to watch that one for sure. I've seen Hamilton
yeah.
many times.
Okay, okay. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. So, yeah, I love movie musical sorts of stuff. And I'm kind of drawn to theater or musicals that also have some psychological themes, given
Mm.
my profession. So, but sometimes it's good just to do something that is light and fluffy and things like that too.
Oh
So
yeah.
I enjoy going to the theater and seeing shows when I'm able and yeah, things like that.
Yeah, that's great. Are there any common misconceptions or misunderstandings that folks might have about trauma or PTSD?
Yes, absolutely. The research, again, I'm going to be a research nerd. The research shows that most of us experience some sort of traumatic event in our lives. Now, when we're talking about trauma with psychiatry, the DSM, the Manual of Psychiatric Disorders, trauma has a specific meaning. So it's not like, oh, I had a traumatic day or a divorce was traumatic. Not that those can't be very difficult and stressful, but I want to differentiate the colloquial use of the term traumatic from what we actually mean when we say trauma. So, trauma is exposure to a death or near death experience or sexual trauma or abuse of some kind, in which the person experiences, a strong emotional reaction. Um, and it also can be people who, by nature, like of their job, are exposed to these sorts of things regularly, such as police, first responders,
Mm.
and things like this can also be learning about or having a family member have one of these experiences. So, trauma is a specific sort of set of criteria, we would say. And then PTSD is actually even more specific in terms of the criteria one needs to meet. But what the point I'd like to make is, even within this definition I just described of what trauma is, although most people, myself included, have experienced trauma. I was a passenger in a car accident in the mid 1990s, 70 miles per hour going north on a highway, and
Mm.
this other driver we went in a circle twice and we ran into a concrete barrier. Thank goodness I had my seatbelt on, of course, or I would not be here. But that was certainly considered a trauma, right? We easily could have died in the situation. Um, so most people, myself included, experience trauma, but trauma does not equal PTSD. So
Hmm.
most people experience trauma do not develop PTSD, and I don't think it's fair or helpful to equate them. I'm not saying that trauma can't affect all of us, certainly in different ways, but the good news is most people who've experienced trauma are resilient and there's a natural healing process. Now, of course, we can define the variables for who's at higher risk for having difficulties if you want to, but really, I think having the mindset that even if something happened, to someone, most people actually move through this and be okay. Most people have reactions at first. You can't sleep well, you may be anxious, maybe sad, maybe thinking about the situation happened over and over. That's normal. That's not PTSD. But for most people, they actually go on and do well. And furthermore, there are now several evidence-based therapies for people who do have PTSD. So there's absolute reason to be hopeful.
Yeah. I really I understand like the concept of you can go through something traumatic and be resilient and get this handled. You can have a reaction to it. You can have obviously a very strong emotional reaction to it. You
Yeah.
can have a physical fallout from it that does not equate to PTSD.
Uh-huh.
If you do develop PTSD, that's not to say that you aren't resilient in some ways, though, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it is something that happens to people, all sorts of people, and that is not a reflection on your character, on
Hmm.
your strength, your personal values and morals at all. Because some things that people are exposed to, sometimes repeatedly, are horrific, and it's
Yeah.
hard to imagine it not affecting you in significant ways. So it is in no way, shape, or form a reflection of strength, of faith, of conviction, of beliefs, of personality, of any of those sorts of things. Absolutely not. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
That's super, super important.
Yeah, absolutely. Can PTSD ever fully go away, or is it something you just learn to live with or develop skills for? And then also, what about complex PTSD?
Yeah. So PTSD absolutely can be cured. Yes. Which is really good news. I used to not say that. I've been teaching this for literally about 30 years. We used to say there really wasn't, that you just kind of something you live with and learn skills. That's no longer the case. Yes, there are evidence-based therapies and more even being developed that, according to guidelines, this isn't just Michelle Sherman's opinion. I mean, I'll tell you when I give my opinion, but for now, I'm talking about research. Actually, the newest iteration of the national guidelines for the treatment of PTSD just emerged, the newest iteration. And it tells us what are have the strongest evidence, what have questionable evidence, et cetera, et cetera. And there are several and growing number of really evidence-based treatments that many people get to the point that they do not meet criteria for PTSD anymore. So to me, that's kind of a cure. So yes, it absolutely is treatable. Part of the challenge, of course, is one of the core dimensions of responses to trauma, including PTSD, is avoidance.
Mm,
And why would we, right? Who wants to go and talk about or write about or be in a group, whatever, about the hardest, most difficult, scariest things that ever happened in your life? And so getting someone to engage with and stick with treatment can be challenging.
yeah.
And so there's actually some even more recent research looking at some therapies that are more acceptable, lower dropout rates and things of this nature that can be perhaps more palatable to some people. But it's a huge thing to be able to engage and keep people in treatment, because treatment can be hard.
Yeah.
With respect to your second question about complex PTSD, can that be treated or cured? Same thing, same answer.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. It's a newer variant or way of talking about people experiencing numerous abusive experiences or environment, oftentimes growing up, and that is also very, very treatable.
Yeah. We've got a couple of questions in the chat that I want to make sure that we cover here. So Rose says,
Right.
have you seen a family or families that just didn't give a flip about someone's trauma or didn't believe the person? I ask because I don't have a person in my family who believes my trauma, and I don't know how someone can say they don't believe it. So I'll let you address that one.
Yeah, super invalidating.
Hmm.
It's super hard to be questioned about the honesty of what you experienced or the impact of that. Um, that would make a really hard environment in which to heal. To have people not even acknowledging or validating that what you experienced. Have I seen that? Yeah, certainly. It's very sad, and at times that can be helped by, usually what I do in that situation as a psychologist is I help the client, whoever it would be, um, help them explain to their family member rather than me as the doctor coming in and say X, Y, and Z. I want to empower them as the person in their family or a relationship to help them talk about the experience. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Mm,
And if it doesn't, I encourage people to stop trying and find other people with whom to heal. Trauma, some people say, is often relational, and healing can often be relational. And so if one stays within an invalidating or toxic environment, that can make healing harder. And so, yeah, it's very sad when that happens. Now, let's just acknowledge that loving someone with a mental illness or PTSD can also be very hard. And so it is not unusual for them to have lots of feelings, for families, spouses, partners, friends, whomever else, to have lots of feelings. And so I need to acknowledge that their journey is also one that can often be challenging. And it's never helpful or okay or kind or loving to really invalidate someone's experience.
yeah. Your comment about finding other people to heal with, I think, is really, really valid because if your family doesn't believe you, that can be really hard to accept and really hard to kind of wrap your head around how can they not believe what I'm saying to them. But I think finding your community and finding the people who are going to be there for you is just so important.
Absolutely. And it could be groups. That's the power of group therapy, right? Certainly there are online groups. I'm a little ambivalent about that, given some of the risks associated with online sorts of things, but many people find community that way. A therapist, all sorts of ways of connecting with other people who've experienced something similar can be incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And this next question comes from Bite Marks. She says, are you familiar with the studies about Tetris as a preventative for PTSD development and also as a positive addition to treatment for existing PTSD? That's awesome.
I've heard of it actually. I've personally not done this research in this area, but there are so many interesting modes and ways of treating people with avatars. Okay, with video games, certainly used for ADHD and things like that, as a way of helping cope with some of the symptoms. So yes, I've heard. I'm not an expert in it, however, but I mean certainly cannabis, other sorts of stimulants and things are being used in terms of different treatments. There are a whole wide variety of approaches people are using to see what can be helpful for people.
Mm-hmm.
Equine therapy, list goes on, a lot of different options.
Tetris was a new one. Tetris was a new one for me. I haven't heard of it in that context, but
Like,
that's fantastic.
yeah, I've heard of video games.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Not specific Tetris, but yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
I don't think it's on that list I just told you of evidence-based therapies. So, but who knows? And by the way, I love the question about prevention. I'm such a fan of prevention. If there are things we can do to support people, for example, before they deploy or before,
Mm,
police officers, first responders who by definition are probably having repeated exposure to trauma. If there are ways that we can bolster or protect them and their well-being, I'm a huge fan.
yeah, that's great. And I don't hear that talked about very often, the prevention
No,
piece.
no, it's not. No, I know.
Yeah. You worked in a lot of different spaces, the VA, academia, private practice. What have you seen stay consistent across those settings when it comes to trauma and maybe family impact as well?
Yeah. I think back, honestly, even way back to college. This was a long time ago, but I went to University of Notre Dame and I started the first support group ever for college students that experienced sexual trauma on this campus. And so I think back to my very early days. I was a little college student. I didn't have any degrees after any experience in doing this, but I still remember some of the stories. Of course, I won't go into details of anyone's personal experience, but from that to, my current day of working with people this week, to many, many veterans I've served, there's um, this real sense of shame that many people have experienced
Mm,
trauma, experienced that I did something wrong. This sense of kind of othering, that somehow I'm hurt, I'm different, um, and this real difficulty with being in the present moment due to the preoccupation with the event, the re-experiencing, and this sense of aloneness only perpetuated by the avoidance, which, as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, is such a symptom. And it can be avoidance of people, places, things. It can also be avoidance of emotions. So
mm,
this avoidance can get played out in lots of different ways, avoidance of intimacy of all kinds. And so as I think again, way back from college in, the early 1990s to my current work and in between, some of these themes, some of these experiences of really feeling alone, as well as the power of community, as you said a couple minutes ago. I mean, gosh, the VA I worked with, they had very large support groups for veterans that come, they drive hours, to come every week
oh,
to this
wow.
group. Some were led by chaplains, some were led by psychologists. Huge sense of that sense of being in the same room and feeling comfortable being in the same room with other people who have experienced similar experiences. The power of these women in the sexual trauma group that I talked about, the power of NAMI, the National Anthem Mental Illness, of people who love someone with a mental illness or history of trauma. The sense of community is key. And among the affiliate members, I think at first it's often a great deal of sadness and pain and sympathy for them. And at times, then, when family members may feel rejected, distanced, why are you talking to other veterans more than me?
Oh.
Why are you going telling your therapist stuff that you aren't telling me? After all, I'm your
Ooh.
wife or your mom or whatever else. That sense of feeling sometimes that your loved one, the one who's experienced trauma, is there but not there.
Hmm.
And so oftentimes the loneliness, the confusion, the personalizing that often these family members think, well, do you not love me anymore? Do you not think I'm pretty? Why do you not want to be close to me? All these sorts of things that family members can really struggle with knowing how to connect with and support their loved ones who's experienced trauma. So again, these are really broad generalizations, but those are some of the first ideas that come to mind in terms of the commonalities of the trauma survivors as well as the family members.
Yeah. Is there anything you've had quite a career? Is there anything that's changed since you first started working with families
Yes,
and
yes,
PTSD?
I do think that some of the stigma surrounding PTSD is starting to go down,
Excellent.
which I personally see as a good thing. I actually don't have data to back that up. I do have data for national surveys of depression. And
Hmm.
actually, we do look at huge surveys of people like, how would you feel about having someone with issue X living in your neighborhood or mirroring your daughter or things of this nature. We actually do see improvements in public attitudes towards things like depression, which is great. I don't know the data on PTSD if that sort of data is collected, but I think in my experience, yes, that there is decreasing stigma. And there are a lot of efforts, of course, to try to address stigma of celebrities, high-ranking military officials, and
Hmm.
different people sharing their stories, talking about how helpful treatment is, public awareness campaigns to talk about, it takes the strength of a warrior to ask for help, try to destigmatize, trying to have tons. I mean, there are so many organizations now that really are trying to not just wait for the veterans patient whoever come to me, but outreach to them and being present in the community. So I do think that there is some decreased stigma. Not it's all gone, of course, but I am a little bit hopeful, and I think that is a positive trend. Plus the emergence of more and more effective treatments.
Yeah,
I mean, that's something absolutely to be happy about and hopeful
absolutely.
about.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not just trying to hide it. You're trying to treat it and trying to find new ways to do so, and that means it's getting the right kind of
Exactly.
attention. And there
Yep.
might not be studies that specifically ask about PTSD, but I think your observations of what you have seen are still very powerful just with what you've observed. I think that that's still
Yeah.
totally valid. So,
Yeah. Well, thank you.
for someone who's living with PTSD or trauma related symptoms, what kinds of support from family are most helpful? And is there anything that is unhelpful, even if it's well intended?
That's a great question. And I'm going to make generalizations here at the risk of saying things that aren't helpful because it really depends on the person. It really depends on the
That's
trauma
fair.
survivors.
Yeah.
Some, for example, may really want to be physically touched.
Mhm.
Some may find physical touch aversive and don't get next to me. Like we can say some things, like, for example, if someone's experiencing a flashback in which they actually really feel that they are fill in the blank happening again, it's generally good not to touch them
Yeah.
because they can be reactive. I think of one of the first veterans that I saw in my office who was having a very, very intense, very vivid flashback in front of my very eyes. And I was kind of coaching the family member what to do and what to say and how to be helpful. So there are some things like don't touch someone in the middle of a flashback. But overall, what I try to do, be it in a family therapy, a couple therapy, is empower the trauma survivor to tell their family members what they want. That can change over time.
Hmm.
Some people may want help like anticipating anniversary dates, like the date of the event that happened. Or, for example, a lot of people struggle with 4th of July, the fireworks, the noise, and things like that. So help me think about how we can handle them. Help me think, trauma survivor talking to families, what can we say to the relatives about why I'm not going to come to the family reunion with too many people and my social anxiety and things. So asking them for things that they can help you with. I think asking families to respect my boundaries. If I don't want to talk about something, don't take it personally. This is something that I'm struggling with and I'm getting my own help or whatever else. And so often depression and often substance misuse, but we'll just talk about depression for the moment. Depression is comorbid. It goes along with PTSD. And with depression is so often social withdrawal and avoidance again of these people, which can only make the depression worse, right? And so I encourage family members, if you are saying, hey, we're going to go take the dog on a walk, we're going to whatever, and they say no, keep asking. Unless they tell you stop asking, keep reaching out. Eventually they're probably going to say yes. It may be the 50th time, but keep letting them know that you're there. Because although they may be pushing you away, at some level they probably are desperate for wanting your help, and just knowing that you're continuing to try, I think is a really helpful thing. For family members, some kind of don'ts. We're talking do's and don'ts here, I think. One don't is to be careful not to pry about the details of the trauma. That's a great way to get people to not talk.
Yeah.
And so respecting their boundaries about what they do and don't want to talk about it. We talked about trying not to take it personally, and incredibly important for family members. I think it's important to not put your whole life in your role as caregiver. Rather, it's important for you to have your own life, your own activities, your friends, your hobbies, your musicals, whatever else it is, because you're not going to be a very great supporter if you're not filling your own cup as well. So taking that time to do your own self-care, your own hobby, maybe your own therapy, all these other sorts of your church, whatever it may be, to get support for yourself while you're supporting the loved one is incredibly important.
Yeah. I really think that we've definitely talked about caregiver and just making sure that you are taking care of yourself before. We've done entire interviews on just that subject. Like it's really, really important, because you can just go and it's kind of that role of like, you can be a caregiver for so many reasons. And a lot of people don't really recognize that, oh, you're in a trauma survivor's life. You are a caregiver for that person.
Right.
And it can be hard to recognize that, I think, but it's critically important to always take care of yourself as well. Whether you're a caregiver because you have kids, you're a caregiver because you're caring for a parent, you're a caregiver because you're caring for someone who's been through something traumatic, whatever the reason is, you got to make sure you take care of yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love this comment. No PTSD for me, but I know that sometimes a party is going to be too much for me, but being invited still means a lot. And I have, I've got several folks who I reach out to regularly, and I'm like, hey, do you want to go do this? And I know because they've commented and said, like, I love that you always ask. I love that you are always reaching out and saying, hey, do you want to go do this? Even though I always say no, because them saying no, I don't take it personally. Like, I'm a mom. I understand busy schedules. I get it. Everyone has their own busy schedule, whether they have kids or not. And so it's like just reaching out and saying like, hey, do you want to go do this? Do you want to do that? It really means a lot to some people.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Keep asking.
Yes.
Keep asking.
Yeah. How can trauma show up in family dynamics or communication, maybe without people even realizing that is what's happening?
Yeah. One of the criteria for PTSD, not experienced by all, of course, but for some people, can be this increased level of tension and irritability, at times having anger outbursts and things like this. This can really impact relationships, be it parent-child relationships, be it intimate partner, etc. And so the family members surrounding the person can just kind of feel like they're walking on eggshells and never quite know when something might set the person off. They can take it personally. It can impact all sorts of comfort and connection in the home and communication if you're never quite sure what may set them off. So absolutely that symptom can be a significant one to impact relationships. Certainly there's research showing increased risks of family violence, in which there's an individual living with a PTSD. So again, certainly there's one component. I would also like to note what I think is equally impactful, but perhaps not written about in the newspaper as much, is the emotional numbing. Okay, when someone experiences trauma, again, I'll use combat example because I work with vets a lot. But let's say that they're, in the battlefield and things like that, and one of their buddies is injured or killed or something. for them to continue doing their work, to continue to fight and protect, they often need to kind of numb themselves out. And so their feelings, they have to keep going. I can't mourn the loss of my loved one, my friend who just passed or was just hurt. I need to kind of keep going, sort of stuff. So that emotional numbing can be adaptive, can be
Mm.
functional in times of crisis. However, you come home or you reintegrate or whatever else, and you can't necessarily turn that right back on again. It's not something that's just like a switch that you just can flip on. So at times that emotional numbing, that emotional unavailability, alternating with an angry outburst, can be really hard.
Mm.
We talk about this concept that you may have talked about in some of your other calls of ambiguous loss. Okay, this is a construct created by a family social scientist here at University of Minnesota, Dr. Pauline Boss. It was originally written about with people who are like MIAs or POWs or things like that, and it also used with dementia. So it's like the person's there, but not there. Okay. Similar times has been described with PTSD. Yes, my husband is here, he's in the house, but he is, not with us here. He's thinking, he's preoccupied, he's tense, he's hypervigilant, looking around, responding to sounds and things like this, this difficulty being present. And in my experience, this emotional numbing or emotional unavailability, which can be experienced by families as this ambiguous loss, can be just as impactful as the angry outbursts. The trauma survivor can't get on the ground with the little ones and play Legos because the sounds or someone behind me, or you're going to jump up on me, or things like this is just too upsetting. And so this need to kind of protect oneself and withdrawing emotionally and or physically can really impact family dynamics in significant ways. And the rest of the family, again, taking it personally, wondering what they did wrong, wondering when they're going to upset them again, and working really hard to be the perfect kid or the perfect partner so as not to upset them. It's pretty exhausting, and doesn't allow for a lot of emotional safety or connection or comfort in communicating.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a difficult, it just causes a difficult dynamic. And it's a change.
Yes.
It's not what you're used to. And it's not something
Yeah.
that you were necessarily involved in, so it doesn't make sense to you either.
Oh, right. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. For some people, they meet their trauma survivor many years after they've had the traumas. This is kind of how they always are. But for some people that the relationship is happening, then they have the traumatic
Mhm.
event, then their relationship impacts. So it kind of depends developmentally on where it is or what it is.
Yeah.
But the other thing, of course, just to again be real and not trying to be a downer, but people who have PTSD are at higher risk for experiencing more traumatic events too. It's
Mm.
just sad, but it's the reality. And so if your loved one has another traumatic event or things like that, the ripple effects in the family can be great. But yeah, both the communication, the difficulty with the angry outburst, the kind of irritability, crankiness sort of stuff, and then the emotional unavailability. Those are two big things that I see as really significant factors in impacting families, especially kids, because
Mm.
kids don't have the cognitive understanding of what's going on. And again, they take it personally. It's like, oh, maybe if I only got a B on my test, if I only didn't clean up my room well enough, or all this sort of stuff of kids wondering what they did wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, that's difficult. Are there some specific signs that a family might benefit from professional help or support, even if it's just one person dealing with the diagnosis?
Uh-huh. Yeah. I really think it's helpful for family members to get help themselves, even if their person with the trauma chooses not to.
Mm.
Because for all the issues we've been talking about tonight, it can be really confusing. Now, of course, it's preferable to maybe either have couples or family therapy in which a skilled external therapist can help the whole family talk about these sorts of things and come together in that. Even if that's not possible, go and get education yourself. Go and learn, go and read, go to support groups, go to NAMI groups again for mental illness. There's a lot of resources and things out there. Your own individual therapist who can help you understand PTSD, help you learn how to communicate. There are books, there are resources. So absolutely, if you're really not sure how best to support your loved one, if you are confused and uncertain about the relationship, if you're worried about your loved one's temper or anger or things like that, if you're not sure how to talk to your kids about your loved one's
Mm.
trauma and PTSD, there are all sorts of good reasons to think about seeking out professional help for yourself.
Yeah. And I'll add in there, we've talked about this before, but like therapy most likely isn't going to hurt anything. So
Right.
of course, some people have bad experiences in therapy, and there are exceptions to everything. But in general, if you have a question that you're not sure about, or you have something that's a little bit worrying, it doesn't hurt to go to therapy and get that professional opinion, professional
Absolutely.
support, kind of that professional guidance. It doesn't hurt.
Exactly, exactly. But find someone that's good. Find someone you
Yes.
connect with. There's unfortunately a lot of people who they don't have the training or experience, or you just don't connect with them.
Yeah.
They're not a bad therapist. You're not a bad client. It's just not a good connection. So find someone you connect with.
Yeah. I've talked about my first experience in therapy before, which was not a positive one. And I stopped going to therapy for many years because of that. I went to like 5 sessions, and all she did was kind of give me like worksheets and never really talked about anything deeper. And I was just like, I don't just want homework. This is not for me. I didn't feel like she was listening. I didn't feel heard. I didn't feel
Yeah.
understood. And I am so glad when I went back to therapy, I really did a lot of research on therapists because I was like, I don't want to repeat experience, but I've been
Right.
through some shit in my life and I really got to get some help with this.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
I absolutely loved my therapist that I went to then
Okay.
because it was just we did have that connection, not like a deep personal connection or anything, but just the connection of communication, and our styles were
Absolutely.
very similar, and it made like night and day difference.
You're
Yeah.
a fan of homework and worksheets and things, but that in of itself
Yes.
is not therapy. You
Agree. Agree.
know, that these baby therapists are, it's like, okay, we're on chapter 2 now. And like the client is like, oh, hello, I'm over here. Did you pay attention to me?
Yes.
So yeah, yeah, you got to find someone that you click with. And good for you for going back, because
Yeah.
you could think, oh, that therapy, that's not for me.
Yeah.
But that you try again. That takes a lot of strength and perseverance for your own wellness.
Yeah. And that therapist did give me homework, by the way. Just that, but that wasn't all she did. So
Exactly.
it makes a huge difference.
Absolutely.
Now, you co-write books with your mom for families who love someone living with mental illness or PTSD. What inspired you to do that, and what kind of feedback have you gotten from folks?
Yeah, so about 20 years ago, we were on vacation in northern Minnesota, and I said to my mom, "Hey, do you want to write a book?" And she said, "Yes, I would love to." And so in the mid 2000s, we released our first 3 books. They were all for teenagers. One for teens whose parent has a mental illness, one for teens whose parent has experienced trauma, and one for teens whose parents experienced military deployment.
Mm,
Those are our first 3. We're actually really fortunate in that the book for trauma, called Finding My Way, a teen's got to live with a parent who's experienced trauma, was picked up by the National Guard, and they sent out boxes
oh,
of that book to every
wow.
country. So that was pretty exciting and just really attests to the lack of resources for these teenagers. So that was good. And then Scoot, another 15 years later, and we were again actually at my nephew's soccer game. I said to my mom, "Hey, do you want to write another book?" And she said yes. And so throughout all of COVID, we've been working on 2 new books actually. One for adults that was published by Johns Hopkins in January, called Loving Someone with a Mental Illness or History of Trauma: Skills, Hope, and Strength for Your Journey. So it's not about how to help your loved one, but how to
Mm,
help your own journey. And then we did a second edition of the one for teens called I'm Not Alone, a teen's guide to living with a parent who has a mental illness or history of trauma. So both of these have just come out in the past couple months. We're pretty excited about them. They are available on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, wherever you like to go. And the thing that's different about them from a lot of the books out there, they are very interactive. So they're not just like pages of text or things like that. Every page has pictures and stories and exercises and activities. We had many, 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 many teens, adults, teachers, mental health professionals, people with lived experience, families with lived experience review and give us input and things. So they're really a community effort. We had a cultural sensitivity reviewer. We had tons of different people review and give us input. And so we really hope that they are kind of like a support group in a book, because Some people will never go to a therapy
Yeah.
group. They will never go to a support group. They will never see a therapist. But hopefully, what I've learned in my 30 years of doing therapy, I kind of put those skills into a book format that people can kind of learn and use that way. So, thus far, it's been a really positive response to both of them. Again, the second edition, the one for teenagers, to the best of our knowledge, is the only nonfiction book out there for teenagers. And so, actually, we've had some kind of neat feedback, largely international. Some psychiatric units in Iceland are using this teen book, and
Wow.
they are Icelandic. Some people in Canada are using it. Some people in the United Kingdom. We're connecting with people in Australia. So people actually around the world, other countries are far ahead of the United States of America actually in understanding the caregiver, the kid caregiver role. And so it's kind of exciting. We continue to try to let people know about it, but these children are so often invisible,
Yeah.
and their needs and experiences just aren't understood or thought about. So we're really passionate about trying to raise awareness of the kids' experience and how I believe it's necessary for all healthcare providers, psychiatrists, doctors, nurses, psychologists, whomever else, to even ask, do you have kids? Much less, how are your children doing?
Hmm.
And what are resources we can help them with?
Yeah. So you turned to your mom and you said you want to write a book. What made you turn to your mom and say you want to write a book?
Oh, she's the only one I would do this with.
I love
She is
that.
a teacher, as I said, she's an educator, and we work really, really well together. Actually, it has been a beautiful synergistic process. Writing is a lot of work.
Hmm.
A lot of it is very thankless and painful and boring and hard. And, at times it's like, oh, I don't want to do this. And so she lifts me up. And then at times she gets overwhelmed and I lift her up. And so it's really a chance to lift each other up. Furthermore, I write typically for professional audiences.
Hmm.
So she helped me take all the psychobabble and put it in a format that your average person, your lay person could read, could understand. And she, as the educator, helped me know how to put activities or concepts in interactive fashion. So it's not just like, here are the symptoms of this, but it's like, okay, what do you relate to? What might be thinking and feeling, and how are you coping? And so trying to really make it interactive in that way. So we drew on each other's strengths. We lifted each other up. We, again, worked all through COVID on these two books. And we also would take breaks to play with my puppy or to like do order in of a special restaurant food or, go on a walk or things like that to lift each other up. But it's been a beautiful mother-daughter experience.
That's fantastic. That's really wonderful and something that I don't know that a lot of folks can say like I wouldn't write this book with anyone except for my mother. That's wonderful. And that
It's
just
so the
speaks to
truth.
your relationship, like the strength of your relationship.
We're so lucky. We consider it a real blessing. We're really
Yeah,
grateful. Yeah.
absolutely. There's some echoes in the chat of I had a bad experience with a therapist also. Getting a new one was definitely the right choice. The next
Um,
therapist was great. I'm an advocate for having a therapist that you really click with or any other medical professional as well. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Your GP and everything, like you should get along. You should get along with them.
Absolutely.
They should be in your
Absolutely.
corner because that's what it's all about is having someone in your corner. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree.
are there any daily practices or small changes you recommend for families who are trying to support someone with PTSD?
Mhm. I think it's staying curious and being open to how you can show up for them in ways that are not triggering, that are not um, crossing boundaries, and showing up with love while simultaneously respecting their boundaries of what they do and don't want to talk about. And so I think it's that presence that we talk about in all relationships, that it's I'm here, I care about you, I support you, I'll help you through the rough days. I love you, these sorts of messages that you enact in different ways. It can be a text message, it can be a post-it, it can be getting their favorite ice cream at the grocery store. It's not always through words, but we show people that we love, that we care about in small, everyday ways, be it a trauma survivor or not. That's what I do couples therapy many hours every day. And that idea of how can you continue to show up that I'm here for you, I love you, I care about you. And then we throw the trauma piece in there that I'm aware that this event or events have really impacted you and I'm on your team. I'm not the enemy. I'm here with you, helping you with the healing. And going to walk through this journey with you. Those are such important messages that you act, that you live in lots of different ways.
Yeah. The curiosity piece always gets me because that's something that I have tried to embrace is just the getting curious about things. And I think that also goes for just asking for clarifications too, because if you're
Oh,
not in an understanding place, get curious instead of getting upset. And there's a
absolutely.
great this came up fairly recently, and so I'm probably repeating myself from that, but there's a great scene in Ted Lasso, which if you haven't seen Ted Lasso, wonderful show,
Oh, it's a
fantastic.
great show.
There's
Great
a
show. I read.
wonderful scene. Yeah, it's just so good. Every episode is just so good. But there's a great scene where they're in a bar and they're throwing darts, and the one guy
Huh?
is like really kind of showboating, and Ted Lasso, the main character, is like, I always used to think that bullies were just mean, and I wish that they would just kind of understand a little bit a different way, because when you get a little curious, you start asking questions about like, have you played darts?
Exactly.
He goes on to win, and it's just like, get a little curious about things, and
Yeah.
if you're offended by something or if you don't understand something, asking some clarifying questions can go such a long way, because it gives the other
I
person a
totally agree.
chance to be heard, and it gives you a chance to understand. So I
Absolutely. I
love
totally
that.
agree. I do too. Ted Lasso, great show.
Oh,
Absolutely.
it is so good. It took me a really long time to actually sit down and watch that show, and I'm not sure why, because
Mhm.
it was recommended to me by so many people. And then whenever I
Yeah.
finally did start watching it, I was just like, this is fantastic.
I have clients quote it. I'm like, okay, I got to keep up with this. Know what they're
Yeah.
talking about. I
Yeah,
know. It's so good.
it's very good. And if you haven't ever watched it and you don't know what it's about, the only thing I'll say is just like, make sure you have some tissues with you, because if you cry at stuff at all,
Yeah.
there's stuff to cry about. So
Behind the scenes. I great messages. I
yes,
agree.
yes. Are there any resources or organizations that you recommend for families who might be looking for help right now?
Yeah. There are a couple that I'll note. One is with respect to mental illness, although of course PTSD is part of this. NAMI, which we've mentioned a couple times, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, which is, NAMI dot, I don't know if it's org or com,
It's
but anyway,
.org, yeah.
that's a thank you. A popular website that has just a wide range of resources. They have free classes and groups, both for the person with the illness as well as for family members, a wide variety of virtual, in person. I mean, there's really a wide variety of lovely resources. So I'm a big fan and supporter of NAMI. They actually have a specific subset called NAMI Homefront, which actually I was a consultant when they first created it, that's specifically for military. And so it has a little bit more on trauma and things of that nature. So NAMI is great. The National Center for PTSD, NCPTSD, is through the Department of Veterans Affairs. They have a quite extensive website that has like a section for professionals, a section for the public, but any kind of thing about trauma that you want to learn about. They have stuff on family members, stuff for the trauma survivor. They have a really wide range of resources that are available. So for kind of accurate research-based information about trauma, that's kind of one of my favorite sources. And then, of course, I have to give a plug for our own books that are just recent resources for families. And I would just love to share with the listeners our website, because you can see free resources there. You can see sample chapters from our books, but it's www.seeds with an S, seedsofhopebooks.com, seedsofhopebooks.com. And there are all sorts of information there on our website with additional resources as well.
Yeah. And if you're looking for links to any of those, they are in the chat right now, whether you are watching on Twitch or YouTube, there's a link that you can click through. And then if you are listening later on the podcast, there will be links down in the episode description. You can click through to the page that'll have all the links for you. So feel free to check
Excellent.
any of those out. What is your favorite life hack?
My favorite life hack, meaning my favorite, what does life hack mean again?
So a life hack could be anything. Anything that makes your life easier or better. Any shortcuts app. It could be an app. It could be a method. It could be anything that helps some part of your life.
Hmm. I certainly use my phone. I'm trying to think. Actually, I love the reminder function on my phone.
Oh
So I
yeah.
have to remember something. Like, okay, remind me on Sunday at 7 o'clock to do such and so. So actually, I find that super helpful
Hmm.
because we have so many things that we try to keep in our brains all the time. If there's one less thing I have to do that, I love that. I love like Google Drive, where if you're
Yes.
collaborating a document, you can all share and put information there. Actually, this evening we're trying to help my nephew find a car. And so we have all of our different links and things like that on Google Drive. So I find organizing large pieces of information helpful to me, be it on your phone and things like that. Those are the first two that kind of come to mind in terms
Yeah.
of life or time savers, as well as, like I said, I mean, for my own personal health and well being, is regular exercise, needing to keep
Hmm.
my body moving. We get lots of steps, we get lots of going to the gym and exercise, and that's a huge thing for wellness, I think, is keeping our bodies moving, getting vitamin D, getting sunshine, not too much, but getting sunshine and things like that, I think, is also just really key, so important.
Yeah, yeah. Wear your sunscreen for sure, but get sun get that
You're in
sunlight.
Texas.
Yes,
You're
yes,
in Texas.
for
Yeah.
sure. It can get really intense here. But yeah, we go on family vacations every summer, and I the first I think it was the very first one that we were sitting down. And we were like, okay, let's look up some places that we could go where it'll fit. All of us were a big family, and it was kind of like, okay, well, here's a place. Well, where did you look that up? Was it Airbnb? Was it Verbo? Was it where? And so I was like, we need a spreadsheet. And so
Totally.
I put it on Google
Spreadsheet.
Drive so that multiple people could contribute. Everyone could see
Yeah,
everything in real
perfect.
time. Yes, absolutely. Huge,
Perfect.
huge fan
Absolutely.
of that type of organization for sure.
Love it.
Well, it is time for the magic moment, and I'm seeing if my wand will go rainbow today, but it does not look like it will. So that is okay. If you could wave a magic wand and eliminate one common opinion or misconception surrounding mental illness or talking about mental health or getting help, what would it be?
Yes, my magic wand that I've been jumping up and down for 30 years is trying to increase awareness of the impacts of mental illness or trauma on offspring, on children. I truly I'm very, very passionate about this. And like I said, I've actually kind of been connecting with people in different countries where, like, children in some other countries have caregiving children have rights. The federal government has in their laws and things that they have the right to have supports and things like that. We don't have even anything near that in NAMI, which again I love. It doesn't support on the offspring sort of thing consistently, actually, at all. And so I've if I had a magic wand, oh my gosh, that is exactly what I do, is try in our country to increase awareness. And this has to be in our training programs, in our schools, our doctor's office, our clinics, our mental health clinics, Boys and Girls Club, 4-H. I mean, all the things. It's like, hold on, we know that about 1 in 5 children live with a parent experiencing some sort of mental health problems. This is a lot,
Yeah,
20% of people, and we're ignoring them. And we know, particularly with mental illness, that these children are at higher risk due to nature and nurture for having emotional problems themselves. And so why don't we invest in prevention? Because there's a pretty good science now in the idea of building resilience, but we're really not doing it. We're not even
yeah.
consistently asking, do you have kids, much less how are your children doing? Even at things like psychiatric hospitalizations. It's like, this is a
Hmm.
perfect crisis time. Like, where are the children? What are parents saying to the children? So my magic wand would be continuing to try to increase awareness of the impacts of this, and how can we then support these children in ways to help them? Because let's face it, it's scary to think, am I going to be like that someday? It's a really
Hmm.
scary question. And how can we help people figure out these children and what they have control over, and connect them with supports of people that'll help them walk through this often very isolating and embarrassing journey. So
Yeah.
that's my magic wand thing.
That would be a super impactful one. Absolutely. If we could just
Oh,
poof that into existence, that'd be great.
no, no, for
Well, we are coming towards the end here. So, folks who are here in chat, first of all, thank you for your engagement. And second, if you have any other questions, feel free to drop them in. Michelle, I'm going to share your website, Instagram, all the places that folks can find you one more time in the chat so that folks can click through. If you do click through, make sure that you like a couple of posts, make sure you comment on something, just get that engagement. That's what really helps pages, really feeds that algorithm. So make sure that you do that. And then while I'm doing that, Michelle, if you have anything you want to share, anything we didn't get to touch on, I'll just hand the floor over to you for a little bit.
Yeah, no, that was a lot. You had great questions. I appreciate all the questions, and I just think the spirit of hope. That's what I guess I would like to conclude my final comment is. The name of our company is Seeds of Hope Books, because yes, trauma, mental illness, children. Yeah, these are very serious, intense things. But as I was saying with trauma and the same with mental illness, there's absolutely reason to be hopeful. There are treatments, there are therapies, there's ways in which we can kind of get the whole family involved and support them. And so these do not need to be, lifelong debilitating disorders. I believe strongly in the movement of recovery. There's a lot of peer support now, family peer support, individual peer support, group support. There are a lot of ways in which you don't have to go through this by yourself. And so reach out. Yes, trauma can absolutely be life impacting. And for example, my experience, I'll never forget that car accident. But as I said to so many veterans I served, yes, it can be life impacting, but does not need to be life defining. It doesn't need to be who you are, that I am PTSD, I am this, whatever else. So hoping to continue to help move the field away from the spirit of, be it PTSD, be it major depression, whatever else, that this isn't something that you have to hide and feel is going to hold you down the rest of your life. But recovery, not the alcohol and drug use of the term, but recovery meaning having reason to go to bed, having relationships, having community, having meaningful activities, using your skills. All these things are possible for everyone, even very, very severe cases of PTSD, schizophrenia, whatever. So I would like to leave with a spirit of hope, that really there's a lot of good reasons to be hopeful.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Sherman. Bitemark says, I just want to say thanks so much for being here. This was a fun and educational discussion, and I echo that this was a lovely discussion about a topic that needs more attention and doesn't always get the time dedicated to it. So I appreciate you giving us your time today and just spending this with us for a little bit.
Thank you for the opportunity and very best wishes for your podcast. Thanks for the great questions and discussion and the people chiming in. It was lovely to be here with you. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Okay, chat, give me just a minute. I'm going to disconnect with Dr. Sherman and I will be right back. Stick around.